I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
Hello, Essence, and welcome. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. It is so good to be back with you after the month we took to create and marinate and delight in the miracles of the Woman Come Undone experience. And hopefully you joined us over there for the month of September. And if you did not, you are certainly welcome to join us over there now. The recordings are currently live and available. And that is at womancomeundone.com. Woman with an A, womancomeundone.com. And so today we are doing a little afterglow. We're going to talk about the Woman Come Undone experience from my perspective. And then we're going to talk about magic and lots of like fun and juicy things. And I'm going to take your calls. And so let's just take care of business first. So if you want to call in, the number is 937-552-2747, 937-552-2747. And the way the calling in works is you can call into the show anytime. And so it's a good idea to do that early and get yourself in the queue. Viv will answer and get you all set up. But then once I take a caller live, if you call in while I'm talking to them, no one can answer. So it'll just ring at that point. So if you think you want to call in, you've got plenty of time to do that. I'll probably start taking calls about halfway through, but just want to be prepared for that. And the calls today, by the way, I'm not intending to do coaching or healing. That may happen. I never rule it out. But I'd like to really receive questions today about what you witnessed. So either insights or reflections or questions. Like if you want to know how something works or why a healing went a certain direction or why it didn't go a certain direction or how it pertains to something that you're aware of in your life. Those would be all great questions that I think would further this discussion. So that's what we're doing today. And I'm excited. I am so excited. One of the things that I noticed as I was tapping into today's show and, what did I want to share? And then of course, my strategic business mind is always going first to what should I share? What will they want? Should I talk about magic school, but it's not actually ready yet? Should I this? Should I that? Should. What should the email be about? What should the subject line be so that they would listen, so they will open it, so they will come? It's never ending. It's busy in here. And, when I dropped all of that and deepened into my essence, and I just went internally with what do I want? What experience do I want to have today? If it's not about service, because what I know is when I'm in essence, I will be in service, but it can't be a so that. It can't be I'm going to do this I'll be in essence so that they'll come, or so that they'll read the email, or so that they'll be intrigued by magic school. It can't be any of that. So when I truly tapped into my desires, what I discovered is I desire to talk about the Woman Come Undone experience. And, I've done that in a really cursory way. Like there was a short little blurb about it in the email to end the experience. And I've done it on the phone with a couple people who were like, hey, how'd that experience go? And I'm like, great. I have my couple sentences about it. But I don't know that in fact, I know that I haven't. I know that I have not actually taken in the fullness of what that was. And I just got present to, who would I rather do that with than you? And so I'm going to be just talking through and feeling into what's there and what do I want to share by way of integrating it for myself. And I sense that there will be some integration there for you as well. So we'll do that. And then I think there's going to be some kind of a natural transition into magic. Because really, when I tune into the experience of Woman Come Undone, I think it actually, it's so vast that it really does, I want to say scare me, although that's not exactly the right word, but it's very awesome. Not awesome, but like awesome. And I am simultaneously amazed by the creation of it, the totality of it, the way that it all came together so beautifully. And I guess there's also a part of me that is not surprised, because it feels so on purpose. And so that part of me is like relieved. It feels good in my system to be on purpose. And so it's like this simultaneous, I guess maybe it's my ego that's a little surprised by it, my personality more that's like, wow, that was cool. So I think where I want to start is I want to start with just highlighting some of my favorite parts of the experience. I like to call them goosebump moments. And so if you haven't listened to all of the sessions, I guess there could potentially be a spoiler alert here, but I think even with the spoiler, you're going to want to listen. So, yeah. So I trust you to handle that how you want to. But there were so many beautiful, beautiful moments of miracles, and it's like I experience miracles in my sessions all the time, in my private sessions with clients. But I think the reason that I was so moved by what unfolded in this space is because I really just want to kind of set this up for you first of how unusual this experience was. And I don't know if you could tell by listening because you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, but most of the women in the experience I didn't know or had only, met once or had talked to on the phone for 20 minutes to just set up the details of them participating, and one of them I hadn't ever spoken to, period. So, it was kind of wild that these women who have this, huge presence, who are, followed by many, many people who could easily get into ego, were so clear and so committed to the coming of the new paradigm, to the embodiment of the feminine, that they were willing to follow their yes into completely uncharted territory of, one, even saying yes to a session with me, even if it was private. That's a huge deal for most people. Two, to show up and have it publicly recorded and broadcast for anyone to listen to. Three, to show up and then be willing to actually be vulnerable. I had a lot of fear. I got to tell you, I had a lot of fear before we started that people would back out at the last minute that they wouldn't show up for their sessions. I had fear that they would show up, but they wouldn't really go vulnerable, that they would give me something surface, that they wouldn't actually play, that they wouldn't go deep or be willing to be real with what was there. And I couldn't believe that woman after woman after woman just showed up and went for it. Not only did they go for it, they went to the deepest levels of soul healing, soul clearing. Anytime you're in a session and someone finds themselves at the edge of the abyss, right? Which happened in several of our sessions where they, we get into the energy space and they're like, oh, I'm at this thing and there's like no bottom and I'm going to die, right? Like that is the ego facing its own annihilation. That doesn't happen every day, right? But that speaks to not only the level of the women that showed up, which it certainly does, but it also speaks to the uniqueness of this container. I was just checking with myself, like, is that an ego thing? It's a little bit of an ego thing, and it's also truth. So I'm going to share it, which is this was an awesome fucking creation. I'm just going to say it. Like, the vision of it was amazing. The energetic holding of the portal to attract the right women, and they... and there were women who had bigger lists who said no, or women who may, have had a bigger reach who, could have looked a different way. But what I see is the perfection of the whole thing now that we're on the other side of it is this beautiful collection of work where it is holding this vibration. Like I can actually see the solid pulse of what this is standing as a beacon. It's like standing as a portal for this is what is possible. This is what's possible in the new paradigm. This is where we're going, you all. And I know that nothing like this has been done yet. I'm curious if it can even be replicated. I think we'll start to head in this direction, which is also what this radio show does, where we're really calling people out to find those vulnerable places, to be truly vulnerable, to stop with the, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me when I see woman after woman following this trend right now of like sending emails and the subject line is, I'm sharing something really vulnerable, a really vulnerable post, and it's like, it's not vulnerable if you already know it's vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's vulnerable if you show up like these women did with no idea where you're going and you go there anyway, like that is vulnerable and that is courageous. We have to walk this line, I think, as women coming into the new paradigm. It's not about necessarily criticizing women who are doing it differently or, who haven't quite found the sweet spot, because all of us can stray, and get it wrong and our egos can get in the way and all of that. And I think it's very important for us to pay attention to the easy perversion of the purity, right? So in the purity, the feminine paradigm, the coming of the new age is about truth and authenticity. And it takes discipline and mastery and the ability to see, the ability to create an advisory board of other seers who can hold you accountable for using the power appropriately and rightly, and I think we're really kind of muddling through that at this point. And so, I honor and love all of us with compassion as we try to figure that out. And I'm very proud of the purity that I feel we held and created in this space. That feels really good to own in this moment, because I think there was a part of me that felt like I needed to be humble or demure, with all of your beautiful effusiveness about what this meant for you or what you experienced or the healings you were having. And it was like, yeah, okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I know, good things happen here. But yeah, it's okay to be proud of it. And I am proud of it. So there's that piece. I'd like to get into the goosebumps of it just a little bit more. So in the goosebump parts, I'm just going to drop down into the space. But gosh, some of the highlights for me, each woman's session had her particular highlights, but as a whole, there's a few that I just want to relish and feel again. And so one of them that really stands out is Ajaya. Really, she is someone that I know, and so I'm also even more attached to her well-being and her soul. And the space that we went to with her, this woman who's so embodied and such a spiritual warrior, and that moment when, I was able to see where her soul is, and she said, it reminds me of this poem, and the poem that she shared was like the perfect energetic reflection of what was happening with her soul. And it's just a spontaneous recitation of the poetry. And then she gets it, right? She gets it. It's like the seeing of me seeing her in that space and her being like, I feel like you've just come and found me. To get to participate in something like that is just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I love that moment. I love it for her. I love it for me. I love it for all of us. That's what it's like when our soul comes home. It's beautiful. And then there was this amazing full circle moment on the last sisterhood call, which was part of the deeper experience. After the last call of the experience, we got on the line and we were opening the space, right? So I was already feeling emotional about, such a magnificent event and, being in this more intimate space of integrating and hearing from these women. And so I opened the space for a couple of women to speak. And the first woman who spoke, I had no idea, but energetically was like, oh yeah, let's call on her, was Ajaya's mom, who I've never met. And she just expressed the most beautiful, heartfelt gratitude for the experience that her daughter had, and for, she was presencing that she has been on this path for 40 years. And, she's, this Sufi love fest, goddess, pioneer, champion, warrior, mama, and she said it feels like the torch is being passed, it feels like all of the work that I have done over the past 40 years has paved the way for what has now become possible. And I just wept. I wept and wept. I could feel this passage for her stepping into her elderhood. I felt the grace of being honored with her approval, with her gratitude. I felt the lineage piece that was such a theme throughout the event that was completely unexpected, with, the mothers and the grandmothers and the sisterhood and the priestessing and the lineage, that happened in so many women's sessions. And then here it was, in person, live. And so she ended up opening that session with a prayer for us, which was just the most beautiful, right? And I became completely undone. I couldn't even speak. I was just sobbing and sobbing. And one of my favorite moments ever in my work, in my life ever. That was it. So, so cool. So that happened. Gosh, what other moments? So many. The moment with Elaine, where she showed up and felt so pregnant in her session, and we had both been having almost like labor pains prior to arriving together, and then, having that spontaneous ceremony of rebirth, which, by the way, I've never done before. Never done that in my practice. As it was happening, there were some fleeting thoughts of really, am I going to rattle on a public call? Am I going to, sing on a public call? Again, those things I rarely would even do in a private session. And it had to be done. And it was so perfect and beautiful. And natural, loved that and loved the ripples. I just felt that. I felt the peeling away for so many of us, of this thought that we have to do it ourselves. I loved that moment of delight in Elaine's voice when she said, it had kind of been so heavy and down and slow. And then she had that moment of like, oh, you mean I don't have to do it by myself? Like she got it. Not on a logical level, which we already all know that, right? But she got it in the cells of her being. Her essence was like, yes. Loved that moment. Oh my gosh, I loved the session with Renee where she, was willing to pull that sacrificial dagger out of her own heart on behalf of all of womankind, right? All of our journeys around suffering for love and suffering to save people and, all of the pain that we've gone through up until this point. And I really felt the ending of that. I felt her putting an end to that. It was, so beautiful. And then probably my most favorite moment of that session was when her little girl, at the very end, her little girl was like not totally on board with the party. And so then they invited, Source in, for her to remember that she's Source's favorite. She's his favorite, which we all are. We all are, but we just forget that. And that was gorgeous and such a miracle. Let's see, other moments that really are just still jumping out at me. On the lighter side, Ali Shanti, love that woman, and I think, I also just wanted to highlight again that we warriors do it differently. And so we don't typically show up crying or soft or lamenting, right? We show up fighting and angry and resisting and we also go hard. We go hard or we go home. And so, she was willing to show up in that totally uncomfortable space of wanting to be vulnerable and knowing that was the point. And also, her warrior ways getting the best of her at points. And then her willingness to take what happened in that session and go into deep ceremony that night. And then text me the next morning and say, I have an update. I don't feel like I went all the way and I have to let them know what happened after. Right? Because that's how a warrior rolls. We go away and we have an epic clearing our journey by ourselves, right? And, and she was beautiful. She said we laid the groundwork there and then I went and did my work and then she came back with this amazing follow-up, which if you haven't listened was literally orgasmic. And so you've got to hear that. But I so honor that. I honor us warriors who show up in that way too, because we also need that. And I honor how we bring our kinds of vulnerability and we bring our kinds of strength and our own kinds of courage. And you can feel this mosaic of, I didn't plan this ahead either. I didn't plan anything ahead of this experience. I didn't know the soul paths of the women coming in. I purposely didn't even try to test them or figure it out before we got on the calls. And of course, at the end, we have a representation from every one of the soul paths magically in the container. And, and I feel like it was such a beautiful composite of the totality of femininity, all of the faces, the mystics with their, vast remembering of past lives and epic journeys of, fear and persecution and sacrifice, and the warriors and the mamas, the shapeshifters, right, that are so chameleon-esque in their energies, and the heroines who are, wanting to be good and to do good, but, disconnected from themselves. And then, let's see, who else did we miss? Oh, and then the great mothers. I think nearly every woman in the experience at least had one of her two soul paths as a great mother. And, just watching and I think that's partly why that theme ended up running through the experience so completely, because it is such a part of these of us midwifing the new age, right? Who will midwife the new age? The great mothers, of course, right? And not just the great mothers, here in human form, but the grandmothers who we witnessed in Jolette's gorgeous session, which I had an experience with in ceremony just before the experience started, of actually meeting the grandmothers and having these activations of learning that I don't have to do it all myself and that I'm fully supported. And then, having them show up for Jolette's session and me thinking like, okay, this might be edgy. I don't know if everyone knows about the grandmothers, but Jolette didn't know about the grandmothers. But then when they came in for her, it totally meant something to her. You know what I mean? You cannot plan this stuff. Just watching every piece fall into perfect place, like the women who had their clearings and then would spontaneously sing us a song, like beautiful Ariel at the end of her song, or, women who were reciting poetry that they knew or had written. None of that was planned because they didn't even know where they were going when they showed up, and I didn't know where we were going. Do you know what I mean? And so the reason this is so important for us to deconstruct is because this is what is possible when we start moving into this new paradigm. And it feels like this is a beautiful transition into magic, right? Because, it just feels so appropriate on, today, which is the day of the lunar eclipse and the blood moon. And I got up this morning and I was out watching it with my children and my husband. And, the energies of the lunar eclipse, this particular one, and the blood moon are bringing our shadows into the light and letting go of negativity in our space from our walk through density, from all our lifetimes. Like that's actually what's happening. It's happening in the stars. It's happening on the planet. It's happening in the energetic. It is actually the coming of something completely new. And, the blood moon is feminine energy, blood, right? Feminine energy on the rise. That's what we do. That's what we are. And, it's like bringing that out of hiding, letting go of our shame and our pain and our fear and returning to the magic of femininity, returning to the magic of the wholeness of ourselves, And I just feel like this experience embodies that on so many levels. There's the direct level of witnessing and hearing and seeing the magic that was happening within each session. And then there's the metaphorical piece, and then there's the paradigm shifting piece, and there's the universal piece. And it's just like, if you missed it, I want you to just take a moment and feel the importance of this moment in history. It's not a coincidence that you are here, that you're listening, that you are witnessing, that you're interested, that you're intrigued. You may not even understand why or know what that means exactly, but nothing is an accident. We've all agreed to be here. We've all agreed to reconvene here at this moment in time. And it feels like, as I stood there looking at the moon this morning, it feels like we are blessed. Like the stars are in alignment, like the universe is holding its breath, waiting for us to remember, And so, yeah. So let me just remind you, I'm going to take a pause here. If you want to call in, the number again is 937-552-2747, 937-552-2747. And again, what we're inviting today is if you have questions about how any of this works, what you witnessed, how I work, how do I see a soul not in alignment, or anything, anything related to that, go ahead and call in. And I'm going to take one quick second and grab a drink. Great. So back to paradigm shifting. All right. So it seems like there's one more thing I want to say about the woman come undone experience. Let me just see what that is. There is. Okay. So the last thing I want to say specifically about that experience is, we are right now so I promised to share. Yeah, there's more. So I had promised to share some of the, difficult parts or the, what's it like to hold a container like that? And, what I would say is the energetics of it are intense. And I credit all of the clearing and learning that I've done over the last 15 years I've been on this path with being able to create what I did. And even with all of that, there were moments where it felt kind of like my feelings would vibrate out of my head. You know what I mean? Like so much energy moving through, because as you witnessed, these women have a huge impact and they're also paradigm shifters in their own right. And so it's not only a session that's impacting them and me, it's a session that's impacting everyone listening and everyone on their list and everyone that they impact, right? So it's this huge, infinity. It really is like an infinity of reverberations and ripples that are happening with each of those clearings. And then to do 13 of them in a space of just a couple weeks, really like 3 weeks, was a lot. It was a lot. And it was so yummy. And also, there's this thing called upper limits. We'll probably do a whole show on it, but there's this thing called upper limits where there are energetic set points that you have in your system on all kinds of things, like how much good you can allow in, how much money you can have, how healthy you can be, all of those pieces. And the reason we have the set point is because that's where our system is comfortable. That's where we operate from. So when we have an expansion, it's why diets don't work, because if you're not addressing the energetic of it, if you lose weight, your body won't feel safe if you haven't adjusted the energetic. And so it'll just return to, where it's been. Same with money. That's why a lot of lottery winners, get money and then they blow it all and go back to where they were beforehand because they hit the upper limit. So energetically, I had this experience of, it sort of felt like being at like a physical boot camp, where you might be there for 3 weeks and you'd have moments where you just wanted to quit or you were tired or grumpy or, you knew you were being pushed beyond your limits. And so I had that experience with the energetics of, every single day having to be at the top of my game and having to clear and be present and, be connected. And so, there were definitely days when I felt like I wanted to take a pause or go inward or just binge on some negative energy, And it's funny because I've said that to a few people and the response I typically get is, oh, well, that's, that's weird that you do that, And I just think it's funny because everybody does that, like everybody. And I just think a lot of people are not conscious to the fact that they do it, And so they, we all do it. We just usually do it unconsciously. So, you have a great day at the office or you take some orders and then a couple of days later, you're thinking negative thoughts and somebody unsubscribes or, backs out of their contract or something. Like that happens constantly. And the way I phrase it is because so much of my subconscious is conscious, right? Because I have access to all of it. So for me, I word it as this is what I want. Of course, it's something subconscious. And it's also, there's some level of me that does want it. That's why I'm reaching for it. So, what I did through that experience was I was able to navigate it. I didn't dip super low during the process because I really felt a commitment to the women and to the container and to the witnesses. But then after, there was, I did really go inward, and a lot of the inward was just to refuel my tank and also to just be with this desire to be, it wasn't even negative exactly, but, it was to be not as shiny, to just not be so on. And that's also okay, by the way. You have to allow space for that. And I think that's part of the gig that we've been sold, in the old paradigm, is that you always have to be perfect and you have to be on and it has to be linear. And so, you have to be getting better, and any kind of even a backtrack, even the word of that, is bad. And, and in truth, the way that we really navigate femininely is by, expanding and contracting. That's how we give birth. There's an opening and then there's a closing, an opening and a closing. And, and each time we may be able to open wider, just like in birth, but the contraction is just as important. It's just as important. And if you don't judge it, then it can actually shift even quicker. And so, so there were definitely parts of that. Let's see if there are other. Okay, yeah. So the other downer that feels a little edgier to share is, I feel disappointment at the number of women we reached with this experience. And here's what I make of that so far. So there's a lot of pieces of this. So the first piece is, my soul is like, that's completely bullshit. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and all is well, right? My ego is like, but was it a good return on investment? Because we put a lot of time and energy into it. And, we had 800-ish women who signed up. And, some people who do events like this have 2,000 or 5,000. And, as killer of an event as this was, I really thought there would be more. And then my little girl, my inner little girl, she says, am I enough? Was it, not good enough? Did we not do enough this or that? So that is present. And then there's my warrior self that's like, screw this. We're not asking anybody to help us. We can do it ourselves. If we want to market it, we will market it, or we will do what we want to do with it, or screw them if they didn't get it, And then in the center of me, my essence is an inquiry. My essence is curious about, where is the space where truth meets critical mass, and is critical mass even important? Like, is it important that a lot of people hear something for it to matter? Or is that just an ego question? And then of course there's all of the other pieces, right? Like, 800's good and, all of that stuff. But just assuming we concede to all of that. I think those of us who are aware of our purpose and really driven around it have these questions around feeling like we're not getting it right, or we're late, or we're not doing it enough, or we're missing our deadlines, And I know that you can relate if you're listening to this. And so, I think, so I just want to be transparent and say, I don't have it resolved yet. I'm certainly aware of blocks, like the inner child conversation and the warrior conversation and the ego conversation. Those are all blocks and things that I'll work with and work out. And I also think this is what it's like on the edge of the paradigm. There's not always a clear answer, and nobody's done something like this before. So, the people who get 5,000 people on their list, often aren't providing great content, and they're not actually, they're pushing really hard with marketing pieces and, fear tactics to get you to buy or to sign up and things like that. And, I clearly don't want to do that. And I also, I'm present to some energetic around hiding. So I think there are many of us who were planted in the places where we've been planted. And we were planted specifically in places where people didn't get us, or we were the only seer or knower or person with abilities or paradigm shifter in a place where there's a lot of density or a lot of souls who aren't on the wake-up path. And there's been a reason for that. There's a total reason we we chose to land in those places. And the first part of our lives often have been, much of aligning with forgetting, so not waking up or, being similar to the people we were around or hiding from the people we were around. And now as we begin to wake up, we remember, right? So there's this pull from our soul that says, I have gifts. I have something to offer. I have a purpose, and by the way, the clock is ticking on it. And we're in this sort of uncomfortable place of, what does that mean? And will I be left all alone if I do that? And is it safe to fully come out of hiding? Because, this isn't our first rodeo. This isn't the first time we've come here where it really wasn't safe, to be the heretic, to be the lone voice of change or seeming like the lone voice of change. And so I just want to honor that. I want to honor that in myself and allow it to be okay, that probably we've, metabolized all the people that I could metabolize energetically in that moment. And I am totally open to the Woman Come Undone experience being a beacon and expanding its ability to continue to shine its signal. It's like the bat signal, to those women who are waiting quietly in their own little pockets of light, who are waiting for a signal that I'm not alone, that it's time, that the new age is coming. And I feel emotional as I say that because I resonate, and like I wish somebody had been there to give me a bat signal. And yet I realize I'm the one, right? That's the gig I signed up for. So here it is, And so, in these setups, right, the way people do events like this is you're supposed to close the recordings and then no one can get them unless they pay, And I kept trying to get myself in alignment with that. And my coach was telling me I needed to do it, and that my last email should be, a sales one that says it's this, and then you got to pay. And I couldn't do it. I could not find the clear space. And I talked to Viv about it because I was past my deadline on writing the email. And I said, I don't know, I can't find the clear space. And she said, why don't you just do it the unway? Why don't you just do it the way you actually want to do it? And it was like, oh my gosh, okay, yes, I forgot again. Yes, the way I want to do it is to say, I'm going inward, here's the recordings, enjoy, right? And so that's what we did. And that's what we're still doing. I don't know when I'm closing them, to be honest. Right now, it just feels, the energetic says leave them open. And so the bat signal is there. And, I invite you to share it. If you want to be an ambassador to those women who are sitting in their pockets, I'm sure that you know them, I'm sure that you know them, and you can let them know that change is happening. They can have an experience of what is possible. And we're only going to know that if we all come out of hiding a little bit and say, hey, you should check this out. Like, this is what's happening. And I don't know why, but I'm just called to share it with you. Maybe it'll mean something to you, So, yeah, so that's where we are with it. And that feels like the clearest space I've ever gotten on asking anyone to share it, because it feels true and it doesn't feel like it's for some numbers game or for anything other than that's what's actually happening. And you know it, and I know it, and we all have a role to play in it. So, I invite you to step into your role, whatever it is, even if it's scary, We're in it together. We are, And so that brings me to talk a little more about magic, because, so many pieces are aligning around this. And, I've known for months that the program that I would be offering at this, time of the year would be magic school. And, and I had all these questions like, well, how does woman come undone actually relate to magic? And, will there be the right timing? And will it this? And, all of those pieces. And then I always just let that go and say like, okay, the energetic will take care of it. I don't know what that looks like. And, of course, the woman come undone experience was filled with magic, wasn't it? It was like one magic moment after another. And people were, the witnesses were saying like, there was so much magic there. That was awesome. And so today I was looking up the definition of magic, right? Because we don't, often talk about that. And a couple of things that hit me were magic is the ability or skill to do things that seem to be impossible, right? And another definition is capable of producing good results very easily, right? And of course, I'm delighted when I see that because that is exactly what the feminine paradigm is about. Magic, particularly the ability to see energy, to heal on this level that you witnessed in the Woman Come Undone experience, the way that you've witnessed here on Wild Soul Medicine Radio, that ability is not particular to me. It's not even particular to psychics or to readers or energy workers. It is a skill that all women are capable of. Men too, right? Men too. But the energetic that we're holding with it this is a return. This is not a new thing. This is not something that we're just becoming able to do. This is an old thing. This is old. We've done this for ages. And when we start to wake up, often what we're hearing is a call to remember that. And some of us are already experiencing, you may be noticing it in yourself, like an increase in your intuition, an ability to know. Many of you have posted that you are doing some things in your work that are new to you, or that you're noticing a new octave of your healing abilities and you're curious about what that is and you're wondering if there's a way to deepen into it based on what you've seen here. It's like, oh yeah, I can do something kind of like that. I wonder how I could do more of it. And that excites me to no end because, I can see that what took me 13 years to arrive at is becoming more and more possible, quicker and quicker. The veil is getting thinner. The blinders are receding. The blood moon is holding the energetic of the time is now. The time is now. And so it just feels like the perfect time and everything aligning for the portal to be opening for Magic School. And it's already been happening, actually. We're not even officially open. We are accepting applications, and we already have 8 women enrolled who found us as if by magic, right? That they don't remember how they got here or who referred them, but they got a message from their angels to, call Jody England, or they looked at the website and as soon as they saw Magic School, they knew, and there's nothing on the website about what it is or what it costs or how you do it or when it happens or any of that. It's just, they listened and to, speak to them and hear what's happening for them and to feel their precious souls and their commitment to living the path, even when it scares them and even when they don't understand it. It couldn't be more fun and gratifying and just beautiful. So, you'll be hearing a lot more about Magic School. We actually, there's an official launch that's going to happen at some point, probably, November-ish. But right now, I've just been offering some really easy ways in for people because the women who are finding us right now are the women who are tuned in enough and awake enough and courageous enough to listen to the bat signal, right? And so if that's you and you want to, have a conversation with me about Magic School, you can just contact Viv at jodyengland.com, and we'll set up a time to talk and we'll see what's there. And just the very quick little version of what Magic School is. Just going to tune in and see what I want to tell you about it. Yeah, I'm going to tell you about it energetically. I'm not going to do the old paradigm way of the logistics. It's this many months and it's this, you get this and you get that. I'm just going to speak to you from the energetic of Magic School. So the energetic of Magic School for the 2015 year it's a mystery school. It is an alchemist's guild. It is a reconvening of spiritual sisters who have always worked in these realms, who have various levels of forgetting and remembering, but are heeding the call, who know that this portal is open and that it is open for them. They know who they are. And what they really know is they're ready. They're ready. And so I invite you at whatever level of knowing you have, if you're feeling the call to be here to create magic, that's what we're going to be doing. And you're going to be receiving healings like you witnessed on Woman Come Undone Experience. You're going to be receiving those for 9 months. And you're going to be doing healings like that. And you're going to be creating this sisterhood that will be a lifelong resource for you, so that you don't have to be alone in your little pocket, looking at the stars, wondering when someone's coming for you. You'll be there. You'll be there. You'll be in your home again, and it will feel so, so good to your soul. So, So viv@jodyengland.com if you want to talk about it. And if you're not feeling that signal, again, you'll hear about it later as we get closer and closer. So let me just check in and see, Viv, do we have any callers? 937-552-2747 if you are interested in asking a question. Otherwise, we may be complete. Oh, I know. There were a couple questions from the tribe, and I did mean to answer those. Let me pull those up really quickly. So the one question off the top of my head was, why do souls get wounded? Why do souls get wounded? Someone's inner little girl wanted to ask that question, which I love. My little girl wants to ask that question. So even though my higher self already knows the answer. So here's the answer to that. Souls don't actually get wounded, right? Souls don't get wounded. They're infinite and they're whole always. They cannot be damaged. They cannot be diminished. But what happens is we choose these human experiences because our souls want to have contrast. And, because when we're just, souls, we're in the light and everything is bliss and oneness and wholeness. And so part of the way our souls can expand in wholeness is by having contrasting experiences, right? So when we come here and we have, an experience of separation or pain or suffering, then as we heal that and move through it and return to our soul is expanded because it's had the experience of the opposite, right? So it's all for a purpose, and the purpose is one that we chose. We actually chose it before we came. So, the painful part is the forgetting that we chose it and that we're actually whole and that this is all a game. And that's painful for every one of us, even those of us who know that's how it works. We still have all kinds of stories about separation living in our bodies, and in our energy spaces. That's what's lurking in the subconscious, which is why wielding magic is the way that we can bring people out of that darkness. When you can see what's actually happening for a person, you don't have to rely on what they know, which is only about 4% of what any of us can access. You don't have to rely on that. You can just go find them. You can go find them in the truth, just like my session with Ajaya. And that's where miracles can happen. What I find about being fluent in magic is it's like speaking the language of the universe. you know? And so like in the Woman Come Undone experience, I don't have to know more about conscious relationships or authentic communication or embodiment practices. I don't have to know anything about that in order to be able to heal someone at the soul level, which I really wanted to be clear about, because it's not that I'm more of an expert in Shayna James's business than she is. I'm sure that she could teach me. I know she could. Like, I wanted to say that authentically. She could teach me so much about how to better authentically communicate with my partner. And I may take a course from her on that. But that doesn't mean that I can't heal her. Because when I speak the language of the universe, that language trumps every other language. So we can go to the soul level, to the level of essence, and find a space of truth. You know what I mean? And this is what needs to happen. We have to start creating communities of women who can do this work for each other. Because this is the level of work that we're going to have to do to really shift the paradigm and heal the planet and save ourselves, right? So that's one of the huge pieces of what we're really doing here is creating these pods, these pods throughout the world of women who can then be a stand for each other. So you can access them, and when you're about to launch your course and say, hey, I want to do this, in alignment with my purpose, or, in authenticity around the new paradigm. What do you see here? Is this happening? Or, oh, I hit a snag in my relationship and I don't know what that's about. Can you help me? And you're not just having a mind level conversation, rehashing, details that are extraneous. You're actually having somebody who can drop in with you, see what's really happening, and then help you unravel it so you can be clean and clear, right? That is what we are up to. So I am looking forward to playing with you. I know that we will continue to talk about magic and experience magic in all of its forms and play and there was one more question. Sorry. I knew there was one more thing. There was one more question, and that was, is there a difference between essence and soul? And I do use those terms interchangeably, so I get that can be confusing. But to me, it feels like there is just a slight difference. So the soul, and I'm just discerning this as I'm saying it. So the soul feels like the wholeness, the totality of who you are, right? That's the container that actually is the being, is the traveler who comes lifetime after lifetime, who's choosing the experiences, right? And then the essence is like the quality of that. It's like the qualities of your soul. So, I am a soul, and then my essence is strong and powerful and radiant and mothering, you know what I mean? But often, because essence is the true and variable nature of a thing, and the soul is the truth of everything. So it's like they are closely related, and there is a slight difference. And so I love that question, and we'll be playing a lot with that in Magic School, because really the work that I do is at the soul level and at the essence level, so that we're always doing the deepest work possible, which creates healing on so many planes. So even though we might go in thinking we're looking at this particular relationship issue, we're actually healing what's underneath that, so that it's also healing your mothering and your soul path and your business and all of that in one session, one process. So that feels complete. So thank you again. Thank you for your witnessing, for your loving, for being with me as I integrated this amazing, beautiful creation with you that you are so much a part of, and your energy is so vital to both as we created it and with its life going forward. So if you know yourself as a champion of the new paradigm and you want to share this work, so that it can be a comfort to those women who may be standing on the edges and wondering when and how something's going to arrive. They'll know that it's begun. So with that, I love you, I thank you, and I look forward to being with you again next week, same time, same place. Until then, sisters, bye.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.